Fears in the rear view, right now on the mission, trying to stay the course on this road to redemption. Giving up seems tempting, but no need, cause I got you and you got me. A little UNITY will get us by through the storm and the rain. I'll be by your side. Look alive, the best has yet to come. Just some words of wisdom, plenty more. I know you've been looking for a breakthrough, trying our best to make do. Every day is something new, but change gon' come. Oh yes, it's true.
Welcome to Redeemed and Restored podcast. I am your host. My name is Mike Noland, and I realized that I should probably tell you what my name is because I've been editing the first couple episodes where I talk about the first and kind of middle part of my testimony and why I feel like God put it on my heart to do this podcast. And I realized I haven't even said what my name is, but I figured if you don't end up getting to the third episode, you probably don't care what my name is. So now everybody knows it. My name is Mike Noland. I'm really happy and excited to be with you today and get a chance to hopefully finish off my story. I keep thinking that I'm going to be able to knock this bad boy out, but sometimes an hour-ish goes by a lot quicker than you think it would when you're talking about different things. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick up right where I left off. I'm so glad that you decided to hang out for the third episode. Thank you so much. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you would be willing to like the video and then subscribe to this podcast, it would be so appreciated. I would be so thankful. It'll also be out on all the other different audio only ways that you can listen to a podcast. So if you prefer to hop on one of those and listen to it, I would appreciate that as well. So when we left off, I was just about to check in to the Salvation Army. I told you I'd been staying with my brother for a few days, and I knew that I was running out of options. I didn't have a car now because I had returned my pretty much stolen rental car before I hung out at his house, and I spent the last 3 days just sleeping a lot of it off, getting a lot of that stuff out of my system, and I felt okay. And so I decided to hop in the car with him, and there we are driving up I-5. He lived down south of Seattle to the Salvation Army Rehabilitation Center, the Adult Rehabilitation Center. It's called ARC. At that time, it was right across the street from the Mariners Stadium and the Seahawks football stadium. And so it was right down there in downtown. They had a huge facility and then a warehouse right next door. And when I got there on my first day, most of it was just doing paperwork and sitting around, and people were introducing themselves to me. All I could think about while I was sitting there doing my paperwork is how much I didn't want to be there, how much I wasn't anything like the people that I was seeing around me, and how much I wanted a cigarette because I couldn't smoke until like 4 o'clock. It was one of the rules. Once they're done with their working for the day, you can smoke, because at the time I still smoked cigarettes or whatever they'd let us do there, man. If I was gonna keep that nicotine addiction rolling. So I got mad at my brother because he didn't tell me I couldn't smoke all day. And then I'm like, well, why didn't I do my intake in the afternoon? Why was I here all day? But he wanted to get me there because once I was there, what was I gonna do? So I see it now that he was pulling all the tricks to make sure that I didn't back out at the last second. Like telling me all the nitty gritty of it on the way there, when I'm like, oh, cool. To get out of this now, I have to jump out of a car moving 65 miles an hour. Good timing. But he was good at his job. So he got me there. And I mentioned this. This was a huge reason why I wanted to start this, because when I showed up, I was out of hope. I didn't think I could be sober. My marriage had at that point fallen apart. I had a warrant out for my arrest in the state of Florida. And I had absolutely no hope that I was going to be able to put any semblance of a life back together, because now here I am at, they love to call it the last house on the block. And it really felt like it at that moment, that it was the last house on the block. But I went from being a business development manager for a pretty big company, getting fired from that job while I was dealing with all my court stuff and using their company card for personal reasons, which they love that, to like now no car, no place to live, homeless basically. Well, not basically, I was going to rehab for the first time, but this isn't just like a 30-day and then you pop out and you're like, all right, I'm better. Time to use drugs again. This was a 6-month, pretty intense rehabilitation center. The first month is completely like blackout. You can't call anybody. Not like really anybody would want to take my call at that time anyways. You can't really leave the facility minus going to church and something that you would be doing with staff. But for the most part, you were just hanging out there, going to work. They would do your meetings because you had a meeting requirement, like AA meetings or whatever. We did those in-house for the first 30 days. So you were there just hanging out. And that was a rough time for me, especially the first week. You show up. I showed up on a Wednesday. They do chapel services and people are completing the program. They do a whole spiel where they give their graduation speech and all that and talk about how their lives are changed and everything's great and all that good stuff. I wasn't having any of that my first night there. You don't get to wear your old clothes there. You kind of go down to their thrift store, well, a room that they have just for the guys in the program, and you pick out clothes and that's what you wear. They even inventory what you have, and it has to be what is showing up on your inventory in your closet. So it's not like you can throw extra stuff in. They're pretty tight about that, and they have their rules. And you end up in a program like this, and your life gets to the point where you need to end up in something like this. You can't really complain about rules in a program that they let you come into for free, and you had nowhere else to go. So people do complain all the time, but for me, I was like, all right, I can follow the rules. And but you get a bunch of clothes that don't fit at first. I show up to chapel in a tie that didn't tie right, and a shirt that's too small, and a jacket where the sleeves are like up to my elbows when I, stretch my arms out. And I didn't have a razor, so there I am with a single blade razor, and I cut my chin so bad, and it wouldn't stop bleeding. Like it just kept going. So I go in there probably with toilet paper or something on my chin, trying to get the stuff to stop bleeding, or my chin to stop bleeding. And then they introduce you, which that's great. Just what you want on that day. And then the very next day, you go to work for them in their warehouse, and you start by sorting donations that come in, mostly random clothes and things that people drop off. So it was a bit of a shock for me. I was like, I don't even know where I am, man. I can't even believe I'm here. That's what was running through my head constantly. By Friday, I had already decided that I was going to leave. Once I hit 30 days, I needed to kind of wait until I could leave and maybe go up to the library and get on the internet or something, find a job, forgetting that I had warrants out for my arrest in another state and I was a fugitive of justice in the state I was in. So it would have been really easy just to hop out and get a job. But that's what I was thinking. And I showed up to a Friday night meeting, and the house manager gave his testimony, and he talked about how um, God had changed his life, how he'd been clean for almost 3 years. His family was finally back in his life. His kids were back in his life. And his story sounded just like mine. And that moment, that Friday night, gave me just a little bit of hope, gave me enough hope to keep going. I remembered that when I was done and I looked back and started thinking about doing this, that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to start it. Because when you're just in the worst spot and you're just down and out, man, and you just are going through it, and then you finally hear something or finally can grab onto something that gives you just just a tiny little bit of hope, man, that gives you some energy. It gives you enough to keep going, maybe take one more step or two more steps, or just get through that day, whatever it is. So that was one of many stories that I heard throughout that program and other programs, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And at different meetings that I've gone to, just being able to hear testimonies of Jesus and his amazing grace and the power of transformation through his Holy Spirit is just incredible. And hearing his story, it made me go, all right, I'll give this a go. And as time went by, I started to get a little bit more strength. I started to feel a little bit better. You get through kind of the, stuff getting out of your system. And by the time I actually hit 30 days, I didn't want to leave anymore. I got lined up doing a job for them where I went out on trucks and picked up donations. So I got out of the place every day and I got to go, downtown Seattle. And yeah, we had to take couches down 9 flights of stairs because there was no elevators at a lot of the hotels. But ultimately, I thought it was the best gig in the spot. I got to hang out with this cool driver most of the time, Jeff, and he was a great influence because he'd been through the program and had been clean longer. So, having a mentor like that while you're in the program was great. So then we get to 2 months into the program, and my brother gets a call from um, I don't know if it was a marshal or some detective looking for me because they wanted to arrest me again on the warrant for Florida. Florida had contacted him and said, "Hey, put this guy in jail." And I thought I was going to have to leave the program. I thought I wasn't going to be able to finish it. He told me he was going to talk to the guy again a few days later and we'd see what would happen. And what ended up happening was the guy said I could finish it and do the 6 months. So not only did that add to my motivation to stay, but it became one of my main reasons to stay because I was like, man, maybe at the end of this, finishing a program like this will give me some pull with the court, or make them see that I'm trying to change and all that kind of stuff. It didn't, but at the time I was hopeful that it would, and that's what happened. I ended up staying and went through the entire 6 months. It was my first stint in recovery, and I learned a lot. I got a sponsor at Narcotics Anonymous and got to go through some of the steps. I didn't make it all the way through, but I made it through like the 5th step and got into recovery, and I started going to meetings, and I found a favorite one where my sponsor went, and I got involved and found a church downtown that I like. So if I stayed at the program after I graduated, I'd have a church and, meetings to go to and kind of rebuild my life. But it ended up being a great experience by the end of it. I met awesome people who I still talk to today. Some of them are going to be on the show, like I mentioned before. And, it made me realize that there's hope, that I could be 6 months sober at that time was outside of the couple of years in Florida, which I was taking Suboxone the whole time. So again, I don't really think that I was sober. This was the longest consecutive period of time where I didn't use anything. No Suboxones, no methadones, no nothing. It was, I was completely clean and I was happy and I was excited about life and moving forward and reconnecting with my kids and getting a new job and just moving forward with life. I know it now, but I didn't know it then, that I didn't really get as deep as I should have during the program. It was my first one. I still had a lot of pride. Who doesn't? And just, I thought, I'm good. I'm never going to do this again. Like all these other guys who keep coming back and keep coming back. That's not going to be me. And they would joke and say, "Oh, don't get too sure of yourself there," because that's the exact same thing I said. I was like, "No, man, I don't ever want to do this again. I learned my lesson. I'm good to go. I've got a plan. I'm a different type of addict than everybody else. I can just go ahead and do whatever I want now, and we'll be fine." That's not what I said, but ultimately, that's probably what I was thinking. So my plan was to stay there after I completed and move into a different clean and sober living after a few months and find a job and keep going to that church and all those kind of things. That was my plan. And that's kind of what I did. But right at the 6 month mark, like I'm talking 4 days before I was going to graduate the program, I graduated on December, I want to say December 5th or something, 2018. I started in June. I go to the same meeting that I go to on Monday nights where my sponsor goes. And I look up at the table where I'm sitting and I look over and I see a girl. And I was like, huh, I haven't seen her here before. And I, did what you do in that circumstance. You're kind of like trying to figure out who the person is. I figure out who she is. I guess she kind of felt the same way that I did. She figured out from somebody else there who I was. And a couple of days later, when I finally got my phone back, because you don't have your phone while you're in the Salvation Army program, or got a new phone. My little brother Steven helped me get a phone when I completed the program. Thank you. I I had messenger messages from this girl that I saw at a meeting, which it's a great place to meet someone where you're surrounded in a room of people that have had epic failures in their life because of drugs and alcohol, exactly like yours. It's really good to, pick up and start a relationship because it's going to be different this time. That's what I did. Um, and I hit the ground running. I saw her messages. I was I knew I was headed for a divorce in my marriage, which is on its way to being over. So technically, if it was now, I wouldn't be starting any sort of a relationship if I was still married until the divorce actually finalized. But at the time, I was like, the marriage is over. So let's move on. She also was in the exact same situation, going through the same stuff. And, I was lonely and seemed like she wanted to be around me. So I hit the ground running on that one and thought that it was going to be different for both of us. It turned out she knew my brothers because her ex-husband knew my brothers really well. And so they knew who she was. And once they all kind of found that out, they let me know very quickly that it was a very bad idea to get involved in this relationship. And I said, "You guys don't know what you're talking about. She's different now. I'm different now. It's going to be great." And I'm sure that they were really just looking at the whole situation, knowing who I was and where I was at, knowing what they did know about her that I had no clue about at that time. Um, they realized that it was an absolutely toxic partnering and it was about to get really, really bad. And Daniel even tried, my younger brother, who was the intake coordinator at the Salvation Army, to sit me down and tell me to not do it. God gives you warnings along the way to like say, hey, this might not be the best idea without really getting my attention like he eventually did. But at the time, it was like he sat me down and said, not a good idea. Here's all the reasons why, and I'm not going to list them, but here's all the reasons why. And you shouldn't be having sex with somebody anyways. You're not married. Your divorce isn't final. And he said things that were absolutely right. And I was a total jerk in response to him. And I'm like, I'm 38. I'm getting a divorce. You're telling me I got to wait until I'm married to? No, I'm good, man. I'm going to go ahead and do what I want to do. And thank you for the warning, but you don't know what you're talking about. Looking back now, everything that he said was going to happen happened, and I should have listened. Hindsight again, being 2020. But I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I again with marriage falling apart and loneliness and not having my kids around on a regular basis, I was just looking for people to be around me and companionship, and that's not good. You got to learn to figure things out on your own. And I know now that this was a very, very bad idea. But again, at that time, probably did know deep down inside, but I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and do this anyways. So, man, this was a really, really, really rough relapse. The worst of my life. It ended up being the beginning of the worst couple of years of my entire life, from drug addiction to relationships with all my family to getting to the point where I didn't even want to live anymore. If I would have been able to see that in the beginning, there's no way that I would have gone forward with it. But it always looks good in the beginning. It's always counterfeit. It's always, what the devil puts in front of you when you're starting to head in the right direction always looks good in the beginning. But if the curtain was pulled back and you were really shown what was going to happen, you wouldn't do it. But that's not how the enemy works. He likes to throw things out there that he knows would get us to go down the wrong path and then make it look like it's good. I mean, I was like, I'm getting divorced. So is she. This is different. We're both fresh start, clean. She's a Christian. She's from a Christian family just like mine. We go to church together. But I said all that stuff, and then 3 weeks into the relationship, we started doing adult things, which was a horrible decision. Because now I am intentionally sinning again. I am being sexually immoral because outside of marriage, I'm having sex. I'm putting her on this pedestal where I'm putting her above God and this, sex and a relationship um, above God and where God's at in my life. So now it's idolatry. And I'm starting up the same behaviors that I was doing before I got clean. Just because you're clean, it doesn't mean that you really worked through all the stuff you need to work through. So it allowed me to just not really deal with that stuff anymore and just dive into a really, really, really bad situation. And it's on both of us. I shouldn't have jumped into it. She shouldn't have jumped into it. I'm about to finish a program. She's in a program that she's going to finish a few months later. It's like, no, man, shouldn't do that. But I did. And so here we are. And as the relationship progressed, um, I made it 6 months clean. I made it to exactly 1 year and 1 day. But the idea was always getting thrown out about getting high again, and doing drugs that I really hadn't done in a really long time. Her struggles included meth and using drugs intravenously, heroin. Mine at that point was pills and alcohol, and mostly pills. But the last time I had done illegal drugs was probably in my teens, if not like, I don't know. It would have been probably before my daughter was born, would have been the last time I'd done anything besides marijuana. So there might have been one time randomly in there that I did some cocaine or something again. But once my daughter was born, all the drugs except for, weed and then pills and all that, but the illegal drugs, I didn't do them anymore. I had enough rough experiences with them in my teen years that I was like, no, I'm good. I just did different stuff instead. So it doesn't make it any better. It's just what I did. And so her struggles included that. So I got to a year and a month or in a day clean. And all of a sudden I had this crazy tooth thing where my face swelled up huge. And I went to the dentist. And at the dentist, I didn't tell him that I struggled with addiction, and I let him give me Vicodin. And I took the Vicodin. Not as prescribed. I took them quicker than I should have. But I was like, all right, I'm not going to do that again. And I did. And just started to let things sneak in at that point at the 1 year mark. And then, a couple of months later, let things sneak in. But I need to go back just a little bit because I started going down the trail of that relationship. And I need to bring you up to speed on what happened at the end of the Salvation Army. I graduated and I promised the officer that talked to my brother that I would turn myself in the day after. And I was so nervous. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if they'd let me out, if they'd want bail. I didn't have $8,500 or anybody with collateral because it was still the same bail. But I went, turned myself in. A bunch of people showed up for me. I spent a night in jail. The captain from the Salvation Army showed up for me that next day. Thank you, Captain Paul. My brother, thank you, Daniel. And I can't remember who else, but I know the two of them showed up. A bunch of people did. Charles probably did as well, the supervisor of the program. I'm sure he did too. So thank you for that. Or maybe it was John, the assistant. But there was a whole bunch of people from the Salvation Army that showed up. And they released me without bail on my own recognizance to go back to the Salvation Army. So this is the day after I complete the program. I turn myself in, spend a night in jail. And about a week before that, I had met this girl. And now I have a phone. And when I get out of jail, her and I start talking. So that's kind of where the two things line up. But then I proceed to start to do everything to make the relationship work, make it to where we had a place to hang out, make it to where, I thought she would be happy in it. I started um, just doing everything for that relationship after I got out of jail and started hanging out with her. So instead of really like staying in the program and trying to stay attached there, which I did for a little while, I broke off after a couple of months and I moved into an Oxford house, which is a clean and sober house. I got a job in business development. They hired me even after they pulled my background check, but I told them what was going to be on there. And when the owner of the company called me, he was like, yep, it was really bad. And I got a really, really good job. And I was pretty stoked. I thought things were going well. I'm like, man, things are great. God's blessing me. And now I look back and it's like, nope. Uh, having, being sexually immoral and having sex outside of marriage and not walking down the path that I should have, I walked down the path I wanted to. This was just some things that made me feel like I was being blessed at the time so that I could just not think about the fact that I wasn't doing right in other areas. Well, there's no way things would be going this good if any of that was really that bad. And it's funny how you can justify your sin when you're in it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And this was, um, ultimately, I'm thankful for everything that happened. So don't get me wrong. If this all wouldn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And I'm free and I love Jesus and I have an amazing wife and bonus daughter with her and starting to, speak to all three of my children again. And that's starting to, get better day by day. And I've got amazing mentors in my life. Just life is fantastic right now. So I wouldn't be where I am right now if it wasn't for the things that happened. But it's funny how we can be intentionally sinning, doing exactly what we know we're not supposed to do, but then take things that happen and make it seem like it's God's got to be okay with what we're doing overall because this wouldn't be happening if he was mad at me for that. At least that's how I did it. Maybe you don't, but I was really good at justifying my bad behavior. I was really good at justifying the sin that I wanted to do. So like I still had issues with money and sex when I got out of the program. And guess what ended up happening? Um, they got dealt with, but um, first, a lot of things had to blow up in my face. So, anyways, let's try and get through the rest of this in about an hour and 10 minutes. Hopefully, we can. And if not, hey, episode 4. Boop. So, there's going to be a lot more than that. So, if the first 4 are this story, and then we move into interviews, which I'm stoked for. Cool. If it ends up being 3, then 3 it is. Maybe it ends up being 3,537, and then we eventually get to guest, in 2075. We'll find out. But either way, it's gonna be something. It's gonna be one of those two things. So there I am, not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but justifying it because things are going well. I get a job. They pull my background check. I'm like, wow, God lined that up. This is awesome. And I'm sure some of it was that. Some of it was, just me working it and talking to him and telling him the whole story and, turning on the violins and the tears and all that kind of stuff to get him to hire me because I knew that my background was going to be horrible and it was. And he knew that too, but he took a chance on me. So there I am doing that. I'm now at the point where I'm out of jail. So I have to go once a month to court to see if I'm going to get extradited, just like before. Worked exactly the same way. My lawyer was like, there's no way they're going to extradite you over headphones. And I'm like, I know. That's what they said last time. So I go 1 month, no big deal. I call my lawyer on Friday. I have court on Tuesday to check in with her and say, hey, what's going on? She's like, don't worry about it. No extradition warrant. Come in, go to work, and then you're good. So that's what I planned on doing that Tuesday was just going in there and going to court. And it's all good. I was on my way to work. So I parked in a garage across the street. And I go to court and I see the lawyer and she looks at me and she's like, Mike, I'm so sorry. The extradition warrant literally came in yesterday afternoon. I just found out about it this morning and you're getting arrested today. And I'm like, well, wait a second. I got a car in a garage. I got to tell my boss, I start listing out all these reasons. And she's like, well, I'll do the best that I can to help you. You're going to have to figure that out. But no, you're going now. And I'm like, can I go to the bathroom? And she's like, sure, because I'm ready to run. Man, I was ready to cut out and then figure it out. And she goes, sure. And she pulls an officer over because now that they know they're going to arrest me, he's got to follow me into the bathroom. I'm like, dang it, that plan didn't work. So, it was my master plan right in that moment was to go to the bathroom, but not go to the bathroom, bolt out the door and hopefully get my car out of the garage before I got arrested. So anyways, I got arrested. And there I am, they got the extradition warrant from Florida for my Beats headphones. And I guess we're about to take care of that now. That was just the second court appearance. So I'm only, you know, maybe it was the third. It was the third. I was about a month into my new job. I'd lived in the Oxford house for about a month. So everything was like starting to go good. Just moved into a house that was awesome. Just got a job that was awesome. And the house was like 15 minutes from my office. And I get arrested. And oh man, that stunk. I I call my brother and I need him to come, get the car out at least, get my property from the jail so I can get the car out and I don't end up getting it towed and taken away and all that kind of stuff, which he was nice enough to do that. Thank you, Daniel. But when they released my keys to him, they had to release what else was in the bag, that they handed to him. And my phone was in one and my wallet and my keys were in the other. So we got my wallet and my keys. And my phone was with me and was going to go with me all the way to Florida, but not my wallet. So he gets my car, all that's good. And I spend 30 days in county. Like, they have 30 days to get you. And I spent 30 days in jail while everybody was telling me, you're going to get extradited all the way across the country. You're going to have to go in a paddy wagon, every single county jail. You're going to get booked at every one. I'm like, dude, this is going to take me a year and a half to get to Florida. But it is what it is now. I'm in custody. I can't do anything. One morning, I get the words that you normally love to hear in jail when they say, Nolan, roll it up. Normally, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm out. And I was. But I was out into the custody of marshals, and we left Seattle, went down to SeaTac Airport, got on a Delta flight on like a Tuesday at 8 o'clock in the morning. I was handcuffed in the front with a coat over me, with no arms through the arms. And with one marshal in front of me, one behind me. They look like marshals. And every stewardess on the plane knew what was up. And yeah, you could tell what was happening. I hadn't shaved in a month because I was in jail. No thanks. You already heard the single blade razor story at the Salvation Army. So there I am. This is a bucket list item that I get to check off my list that I totally thought was coming one day. I'm getting extradited across the country by 2 marshals for a felony out of another state. Yay. And they have no idea why you're wanted because they want to assume that you're dangerous. I think they figured out about an hour into the flight that I wasn't, and they got me a movie, and they even got me pizza at the place in Florida when we got to the airport, because they're like, you're gonna eat really bad food again for a while, and you have been. What do you want? I'm like, pizza. And so they bought me pizza, and then I realized I bought me pizza because you end up paying for the entire extradition is how it works. So, but it's still nice of them. And we get all the way to the jail, and the marshal books me, and he turns to me and says, really? And I'm like, what? He's like, headphones? And I started laughing. I was like, yep. You came all the way across the country to get me over some Beats headphones. And I was like, what were you doing last week? He was like, we were chasing down a murder in Puerto Rico. And I'm like, oh, how was your trip to Seattle? Was it nice? Did you guys check anything out? I was just, being myself. It didn't get me out of going to jail. Unfortunately, he still booked me, and there I was in jail in Florida. I thought I was going to be stuck there until the end of the case because I didn't have bail money. I didn't have anything. And my awesome uncle, my Uncle Joe, bailed me out. And I heard Noland roll it up at 3 in the morning. I got out of jail. Man, I was so stoked. And then I realized I don't have a wallet. I got my phone, but it's dead. But I figured it out. I went over to the bail place, cash out myself some money, or cash out some money to the guy. And he even drove. The nice dude at the bail bonds place drove and got me cash. And my brother texted me my ID, and there I was at the, beautiful Travelodge facility in Orlando, and had a place to stay. I stayed until I thought I was going to get arraigned, and turns out I didn't have to do that. So I'm back on a plane on my way back up to Seattle, and I get back up. Now I don't have a place to live anymore because the Oxford I was living in had to give my room to somebody else because I didn't pay rent because I was in jail. 2 jails on 2 different coasts in the same day. I'm pretty gangster. So I told my daughter that after it happened. She's like, no, you're pretty stupid. I'm like, yeah, that's better. Better definition. But I can say that I was in 2 different jails on 2 different coasts in the same day. Yay me. And so I didn't spend a ton of time, maybe 4 days in jail down there. I get out, I get back to Seattle, and my goal is to get my job back. That didn't happen because I disappeared. He knew why, because he knew about my court stuff. He had to tell everybody else in the office what was going on. He was the only one that knew. And they were like, yeah, no, we're good. He can just stay not here. And that's what they did. So I didn't have a job. And now I have, the pending case in Florida, and I'm no longer a fugitive of justice in Washington because they know where I'm at. So, 1 down, but I still have a pending felony case for felony theft in Florida. I'm not getting a job like I normally have. Even the Salvation Army wouldn't hire me. I talked to Captain Paul, and he's like, man, I'm so sorry I tried, but until you get done with the case down there, they won't hire you. And I understood. So when they wouldn't hire me, I'm like, man, this is going to be rough. Like, where am I going to work? And then I lived with my brother for a little bit. I lived with Daniel. When I got back up, got some things figured out, got into an Oxford house, again, a different one, and then got a job at a construction company doing drywall. And so, I'm making do. I'm staying sober. I stayed sober through this whole thing at this point. I'm still with the girl that I was talking about. We're doing things that we shouldn't be doing, but we're not doing drugs yet. And I have a job in construction. I did that for a while. I was low man on the totem pole. I got laid off, and then I ended up working in a restaurant as a breakfast cook. So that's where my life had gotten. But I kind of had to wait till that got figured out, and my case wasn't until August. And at this point, it was like March or April. So I had a little bit of time before I went down and dealt with it. But I did. I flew down, pled out. Don't have a felony on my record. Got 18 months supervised probation. They transferred the probation up to Seattle, and I was able to literally fly down there. My uncle hooked that up too, stayed in a Salvation Army spot, and got picked up by this really nice lady and dropped off at the airport. And then I went to court, and everything was good. Even an officer met me there that my uncle set up, and that was cool. To just help. He kind of just talked to me while I was waiting and stuff, and was gonna vouch that I don't know, gone through the program or something, or say that I was a good guy. Obviously, he didn't know me. So I went down there, and it all went super smooth. And I was on a plane back to Seattle, and my plan was to find a job back, doing what I was doing before, business development, sales, so I could start making money and get out of Oxford houses and get my own place. Because I was in such a hurry to get going on life. I'm like, I don't want to live here for a year, 2 years. I just was ready to go. Like, let's go, let's go. That's where I was at. So the only thing I never told anybody while I was down in Florida. I went to the bar the night before. I walked over to one, and I had a couple drinks, and then just went back to the room, went to sleep. I was nervous and all that. I didn't know what to expect, and I drank a couple drinks. But at that point, I'd already done the Vicodin. I graduated, or I started Salvation Army in June of 18. I made it to June of 19 sober. The dentist happened then, and then a couple different things from June until August, including a 5-day little meth stint with my girlfriend at the time. Yep. And so when I went down there in August, I slipped in a couple drinks, for the night, and then went to bed and never told anybody about it. But hey, now I just told everybody about it. So I wasn't doing everything on a regular basis, but I was not completely, sober throughout that period of time. So it sneaks back in, and it's never just once or twice. At least for me, it's eventually going to get pretty bad, and it did. So August goes by. I complete the case. I come back up. I've got a probation officer in Seattle. I I decide to move into a clean and sober house again, because at that time I think I'd moved in with my brother Jamie or somebody. I can't remember. I think, yeah, I was living with Jamie when the whole court thing happened, and I went to Florida. But I decided to move into clean and sober. It's just easier, man. They can come and check, and that way I've got to be sober. I've got to do drug tests and all that. I had to stay on point for probation, because if I pop dirty, I'm going to jail. I don't want to go to jail anymore. I'd had my fill, at least for that moment in time. I saved that for a little bit later. And so I decided, to move back into a clean and sober house, not Oxford this time. It was a different one. Some friends from the Salvation Army were at this house, so it worked out pretty good. I'm able to get a new job as a director of client solutions for IT solutions, consulting and staffing company. This is probably the best job I've ever gotten in this industry. An amazing salary. It was close to 100 grand a year plus commissions and all this other stuff. And I worked from home, and, it was an awesome job, small company. They reached out to me on LinkedIn after everything happened with my court, and they hired me. And I passed whatever their initial employment stuff was. It was a smaller company, so who knows? They might not have done a background check, but everything was good. I'd told my boss that I'd struggled with addiction in the past, and I went through the Salvation Army and all that. And he told me he had a son, similar situation. So we were good. So now I have a great job and I'm living in clean and sober house. I'm with this girl and she moves out of her program and gets her own place. And moving forward now, I at the time lived with my brother and then moved to this clean and sober house. And then that December, uh, we make a huge mistake and we get some drugs. We got some opiates and we got some cocaine, meth, a few different things. And we went on a bender for over a week. It ended with me ending up in the hospital because I was so dehydrated and needed to be hooked to an IV and man, no sleep and all that kind of stuff. It just ended really bad. And my car broke down and all this kind of stuff. But because I worked from home, I was able to maintain my job, but got into kind of a sticky situation where I had nowhere to go because how are you going to go back to your clean and sober house when you're tweaked out on coke or meth or pills or whatever? You're going to fail a drug test. So I called my brother Daniel again, told him what happened. He said I could come there, but just for a short stint until I figured some stuff out. And had my girlfriend at the time wasn't allowed to come over to the house ever. And he suggested that I ended it. He tried to be nice about it again. And he was seeing what he said to me back when I first started dating her. He was starting to see it come to fruition. And I'm like, man, we've only messed up a couple times. We're not doing drugs on a regular basis. At this time I'm on probation. So I'm really pushing it because if I end up having a probation officer show up or I get called into probation, um, man, it's not good because I would have failed a drug test and all that, but I kind of knew when my appointments were. So if I did drugs up until a certain point, I could stop and then pass my drug test. But that all could have been ruined by them surprising me at home on any given day. But they never really did. But at that time, now I have no place to live and I still have a job. But I'm at my brother Daniel's again for a little bit. Stayed there and didn't like that he wouldn't let my girlfriend come over and all that. So I'm driving to see her all the time, which I shouldn't have. I should have called it right at that moment. But again, shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? Um, but at the end of that, I left his house and I ended up moving in with my brother Steven for a little while. Kind of bounced around a little bit from December until February, March, and then kind of put it back together. But um, had gone to the doctor and started getting Adderall again and started getting pain meds again. So now I'm starting to do things on a regular basis. And then decided that I was going to get an apartment because I wanted to move out of my brother's apartment so I could just kind of do whatever I wanted. Because there I am, starting to sneak drinks again every once in a while, but that really wasn't a big thing. I was really just sneaking, doing a bunch of Adderall and popping pills, and ended up getting an apartment out in Bothell, a nice apartment. And I was like, all right, cool. Got a great job, got an apartment. Things are fine. I'm good. And then COVID hit and you couldn't go anywhere. Seattle was on like full on lockdown. They shut the schools down immediately and all the crazy stuff that happened anywhere. It happened there. And so now I don't have to go to meet clients in person anymore for my job. Everything's over Zoom. I don't have to meet up with my boss or anything because I already work from home and we typically would meet up over Zoom, but sometimes we would meet in person because he lived in the same area. And then I didn't have to meet with my probation officer anymore because of COVID. So all I had to do was text and check in with him over the phone. So no more drug tests. They're not going to show up to my house. COVID shut everything down there. I couldn't even do my community service because I was supposed to do it with county and couldn't do it. So COVID, yeah, that was really, really bad for my addiction. I had a bad experience with my ex trying to pick up my youngest son. And at the time, I really wasn't using anything. And my now ex-girlfriend, but was my girlfriend at the time, I knew she had started kind of using other drugs heavily, not just the Adderall and the pills. It was like the really illegal stuff. And she was starting to use drugs intravenously. And I I knew that relationship should probably end. But after just a tough time where I went out to pick up my kid and it didn't work out, I started doing what I normally do and self-loathing and just being like, well, what's the point? Why am I even trying? It doesn't even matter anyways. And went back and connected with her. And then we went and got more of the wrong kind of drugs. And that started 2 years of the worst my addiction has ever been in my entire life. That started 2 years of me using heroin for the first time. I was 40 using heroin for the first time. That's a weird midlife crisis. Most people go buy a new car. I went and bought heroin. I started using cocaine like crazy and started using drugs intravenously. I'd never, ever, 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 ever done that before in my life. So I'm shooting up heroin with cocaine together, which is called a speedball, which could kill you so easily. If I couldn't get enough, cocaine, I'd fill in the gaps with meth. But my preferred drug of choice now at that point was heroin and cocaine. Um, Pills, sure, but I fell in love with the combination of heroin and cocaine, and I fell in love with the combination of it injected through intravenously. I don't want to talk about it too much. I don't want to trigger people, but I want you to know how bad it got, and this is how bad it got. Now I'm using drugs constantly. I was able to hold on to my job from that time. That was summer of 2020. I'm going to kind of just skip forward to a point in the story because I could tell you 1,000 crazy stories of run-ins with the police, arrests, ODs, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just going to skip forward to the end of it, which it all started to fall apart when I lost my job. But I held on to that job from 2020, middle of 2020, all the way until October of 2021. Still adding clients. My boss still happy with me. I could turn my camera off if I looked too rough to go to meetings and just say there was a problem with my camera. Again, I didn't have to meet with clients in person, except for one where I drove all the way to Eastern Washington, met a guy for lunch, shot up in the car, rolled my sleeves down, and met with him and got a contract. I have no clue how I did it. I was a mess. But I get all the way to October of 2021, and I did what I normally don't do, which was meth. I usually typically did cocaine, and I don't like telling the people the truth on this one because this is super embarrassing, but it's what happened. I shot up way too much meth and went into what's called psychosis. This is October of 21, and I went nuts for a little while. I thought everyone was coming to get me. I thought things were going on with my phone. I thought things were going on with my girlfriend. I thought everything strange. Some of the stuff with the girlfriend was probably happening, but anyways, suspected everything that you could possibly suspect. Cheating. Suspected she was trying to take my personal info and all that stuff. But then on another level, like I got weird in the head, man. I went into psychosis. A huge lack of sleep, and then a large amount of amphetamines injected into your bloodstream is a very bad combination. And the drugs nowadays, it's not like drugs have ever been good, but they've gotten so bad. Drugs are bad. Shocker. But no, like the stuff that they put in it is so bad that this can kind of happen. Sometimes it would just randomly happen, but I did way too much. And I can't, I thought I was going to die when I did it. And then after that kind of wore off, I went a little nuts. So I packed everything in my car and I took off. And I was gone for 2 weeks. I thought I was gone for 3 days. I went into a Verizon store, changed my phone number. I remember the girl looking at me like, "You're nuts, dude." And I called my boss at the beginning of it. He probably thought I sounded crazy and then disappeared. And all of a sudden I came to, drove all the way back up to Seattle. I was somewhere in Oregon. I don't know where I was going. Maybe I thought I was going to go to Arizona, maybe somewhere else. I have no clue. It was bad. I was out of my mind. And driving, no sleep and just randomly gallivanting through Washington and Oregon doing who knows what. Came to all of a sudden and drove all the way back. When I got back, I realized how long it had been. I called my boss and he's like, "You call the day before you get paid and you've been gone." And I had to call your relatives. I had to call your daughter. I had to call your dad, trying to figure out if you were dead. And you just show up out of the blue and you think you're going to have a job and all that stuff. And I didn't. I didn't have a job. I got fired for good reason. He was probably doing me a solid, trying to get this thing to be over with. But at the time, I was all mad. I'm like, I've got you clients. I've done this for you. I've done that, and yeah, great. But I disappeared for 2 weeks, and the whole time I was getting high anyway. So it was just a matter of time before I did something really stupid. And so yeah, I did that. I did way too many drugs and ended up in a psychosis and lost my job. And now I'm super depressed. I'm ready to. I realize the writing's on the wall. Like now I don't have a job. That whole time because of COVID, you know, you could be back on rent or get places to pay rent or pay bills for you and all that kind of stuff. And I had a really good job and plenty of money to support a really crazy drug lifestyle. And then once that's off the table, and now I'm on unemployment and go from what I was making to unemployment, it was just a matter of time before it was all gonna end. And basically, once the unemployment ended up running out, that's when it ended. But at that time, man, I remember being at my lowest, and I was starting to contemplate suicide and thinking about how I was going to do it. And in depression and stuff from my addiction in the past, I'd thought about suicide a few times, but like ending it. 2018, when I couldn't stop using Adderall and all that, and the warrants, I thought about just ending it. I got really depressed then. But this was like, I didn't think I could ever stop using drugs. I didn't think I could go a day because I wanted to, but every morning I woke up or stayed up all night, and I was so addicted to that needle. I did it so many times, and just how it gets so bad. I wanted to die. I wanted to die. And I was ready to be done. And I got a text from my little brother, Daniel. It's the first time I'd heard from him in a while. And he was just checking in on me to see if I was all right. And he put a scripture, Romans 8:1, therefore there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Man, I lost it. I started bawling. It was just like, it was like right when I was thinking that stuff. I haven't even told him this. So, surprise. I get a text and it's like God talking to me. And so I don't go down that road, but I was I was in really bad shape and super depressed. And now I didn't have a job, so now I don't even have to fake that. I'm gonna go even harder. And I did. Um, that November I ended up getting an infection so bad in my arm because I'd missed so many times when trying to use drugs intravenously, and it gets stuck under your, yeah, it's gross. I got infected, and then I slipped and fell and had a hairline fracture on the back part of my arm. November of 21. It was in so much pain, even though I was so high, that when I rolled over on my arm, I started screaming. Like I couldn't even hold it in. My arm was swollen and red, and I went to the hospital. There was a full waiting room. They were into overflow rooms, and I got in 5 minutes because they saw my arm and they rushed me back to a nurse. The nurse started crying when she saw my arm. I didn't even realize how bad it was at that time. I was so out of it. She said, "Oh, honey, it's going to be okay." As she's crying, I'm like, "Why is she crying?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this must be bad." They checked me in. The other like nurse and doctor come to talk to me, and I ended up in the hospital for a week with my arm up like this, and I couldn't put it down because they were having a orthopedic surgeon, I think it is, come check on me every single every single day, multiple times per day, because I realize now they were trying to look and see if they needed to amputate it. The infection had got so far up, it was close to my heart that I almost went septic. And, then you're pumping poisonous blood through your body and you could die. So they ended up not having to do that. I have scars all over my arm from that one and another one. But I ended up in the hospital for a week, still using drugs in the bathroom like an idiot. I was on Dilaudid and all this other stuff, but I'm still like, I had my dealer at the time come to the hospital and give me some drugs because I ran out. Take some to my girlfriend at the time too. I mean, I have everything I need there, opiates wise, being intravenously put into my body, and I'm still using stuff. Still not realizing the ramifications with my arm. I leave the hospital, go home, realize I haven't done anything to that arm for a week, and I start shooting up in it. Uh, it was so bad, so bad. It was so bad. So that happened in November. I get out of the hospital, and then it's just getting worse. Me and my girlfriend at the time, we're fighting. We're so strung out on stuff. I'm not working now at all, so it's just constantly using drugs and going out and doing stupid things. Run-ins with the police, but because of COVID, like, even though I got arrested a few times and spent a couple nights in jail, I got out and no charges were ever brought against me. I got crazy stories about that, but I'm not even gonna get into that. I'm gonna jump forward now to May. I mean, everything happened within that period of time that you would imagine happening. I OD'd, almost died. I, ended up in the hospital with multiple infections. Like the one that I just told you about was the worst. Almost going septic multiple times. So many run-ins with the cops. It was crazy. And it looks like now that we're 55 minutes in, we are going to do this thing in 4. So, or like I mentioned in the beginning, whatever number I said, 3,625. No, we should get through this in 4. Should. But, and this is the short version. So, so all that stuff happens. Jump forward to May. My ex, she wanted to go back and see her kids in New York, and I was ready. Her and her son were going to go back. The one that lived with us, man, poor kid, being around all that, that just sucks. And I'm sorry for that he had to even just see all this silliness and just the drugs, and it's just not okay. That's not okay. But he was going to go back with this mom, and she wanted me to go too, but I didn't want to go. I wanted this relationship to be over. I bought her tickets back there for both of them and was just waiting for the day to come for them to leave. Honestly, I was to the point now where I was ready to die again. I I couldn't imagine a life continuing like this. It was a horrible existence, and I didn't feel like I could quit. I didn't see a road that I could go down. I even with all the stuff, I could have called somebody that I met at the Salvation Army. I could have called my brother. I could have done all these things, but that just wasn't clicking at that moment. All I saw was drugs. All I saw was how bad my addiction. I couldn't imagine a day without the drugs, the withdrawals, and even if I'd get to 8 hours without them, which was rare, I just was like, I can't stand this. And a few dollars fixes the problem, so no thanks. I'm gonna stay high. But before this thing happened with May, where she flew out, I had started at the beginning of the year. I heard a song come on. I would get these get an itch sometimes to listen to some Christian music or watch a pastor, hoping that it would kind of bring me back to reality. Sometimes when I'd have these, like times where I hadn't slept forever and things were getting kind of crazy, I would listen to Christian music and just pray and start begging God for a miracle. But I heard this song and it came on. Um, and I can't say what it is because all the rules with copywriting and stuff, but basically the gist of it was that freedom is on its way, and freedom is in the name of Jesus. And I heard the song and the lyrics were so simple, but I felt like God was talking to me like, you're going to be free soon. This is going to be over. Man, I think back to that. I know this was so real because I am now. And it was like right around the corner, but at the time I couldn't see it. But this song came on and the song just spoke to me. And I started listening to it all the time, even though I'm getting high. And I'm watching pastors, messages about stuff that would help me like overcome addiction. And I'm like trying to do the stuff that they said to in it, but I was so out of it. But I started begging God for a miracle. Back then, I'd get on my knees and I would beg him. And I might get up and shoot up, and I might get up the next day or not get up, just stay up all night and keep doing drugs. I couldn't stop. But I begged God for a miracle over and over and over again. When this was happening, fast forward to May, still begging God for a miracle, but I'm at the point where, man, my unemployment's just about up. It's about to get bad. I'm to the point where I might just start doing really stupid stuff to try and get money, and that's not good. And I'd already done a bunch of stupid stuff. So this would have just been more and worse. I've been begging God, praying to God since the beginning of the year. So this is about 5 months of praying every day. Yeah, maybe not every day. Maybe some days I was so out of it I didn't, but it was pretty frequent. And that song kept running through my head, and I kept playing it. Freedom, is on its way. His name is Jesus. And I'm like, yep, I know it. I just started to know that it was going to happen. I was feeling hopeless, but somewhere deep down on the inside, I'm like, maybe finally I'm going to get a miracle. And this is the beginning of that. So she gets on a plane and leaves to go to the East Coast. Backtrack. She's about to, the next day, get on a plane and go to the East Coast to be with her daughters for like a couple weeks. I had just bought a ton of drugs and was getting low on money. Unemployment was about to run out. But I got a ton of different types of drugs. My plan was to get so high once she left to probably just, fall away into oblivion, maybe get so high that I OD'd and nobody ever woke me up. I don't know. I had plans to get extremely high, and I didn't care at that point if I lived or died. I know I just talked about the whole freedom thing coming, but that was when I heard the song several months prior, and I'd still think about it sometimes. But deep down on the inside too, I was super depressed and I was in bad shape, and I didn't ever think I could stop using drugs again. I begged God for a miracle and hoped it would happen, but I didn't know what was up. So I bought a ton of drugs, and I'm going to end with this story. I bought a ton of drugs, every different kind you could imagine. And even though I just said my plan was to drift off into oblivion, I'm like, man, I'm going to need more money. The same day I bought the drugs, I had them in my backpack. At this point, my car had been repoed because I guess when you don't pay the bill for your car, they come get it. Shocker. They want it back. So, yeah, I decide to go into a store up there and steal a ton of stuff. So that I'd have more stuff that I could sell and make money because I was about to lose unemployment. It was all about to be there. I go into the store, I load up a cart, and I walk out with this cart. I got my backpack with all my drugs on because that was really stupid. I should have left that at home. But I start walking with this cart down the street and go behind another store, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm like, man, if I can just get to the gate opening, if I can just get into my apartment complex, I can stash this, bolt from my apartment, come back and get the stuff. Well, that doesn't happen. I make it about this close to the gate, man, this close. And 4 cops swoop in. And they, there I am, spotlights on me, 4 different cops. And they're like, hey. I'm like, hey. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just walking home. I just went shopping over there at the store. And they're like, huh. Got a call that somebody that looks just like you might have stolen a whole bunch of stuff in a cart, walked out of the store and walked across the street behind this store. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't seen him. And they were like, well, do you have a receipt for the stuff in the cart? And I'm like, yep. And I had no clue if I had one or not. I know I didn't have one for the stuff that was in the cart, but they let me reach into my pockets. I asked for permission because cops. And I pulled out a receipt, and it was from the same store, but it was for like a Starbucks, drink or something at the same store. And they said, all right, let me see it. They look at it. They looked at me. They're like, really? And I'm like, hey, I had to try, and they laughed a little bit and then proceeded to arrest me. They verified with the store on this crazy new technology that I'm using for this podcast that it in fact was me because they have cameras and could see that it was me that walked out the store and yelled at the guy when he said he was going to call the cops. And yeah, they confirmed pretty quick that it was me. They put me in the back of the car. I start to realize that I had pled out on my felonies in Florida, and those were going to come into play. And I'm about to get charged with some pretty serious things because I have a ton of drugs on me, and I just stole a bunch of stuff, well over $1,000 worth of stuff. So it's going to be felony theft. And I start to realize how bad this is about to be. They put me in the back of the car, and they start going through my backpack and they pull out all the drugs, and they're looking at each other like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, I had so many different types, man, like everything you could possibly imagine. And yeah, so the drugs, I have my ex-girlfriend's ID in my bag. So, at the time I'd say it's my girlfriend, but that's what everybody says. I know the person whose ID and stuff's in my bag, but I actually did. And I had stolen over $1,000 worth of stuff on camera. And they tell me, we're going to charge you with felony theft. We're going to charge you with attempted identity theft. And we're going to charge you with possession with intent to distribute, which is a really hard charge to get in Seattle, because at this point, they'll just take your drugs, but they won't charge you. But I had so many. They had to charge me with intent to distribute. I said, officer, I just intended to distribute all of those drugs to myself, not to anybody else, but that didn't matter. So I'm in the back of the car, and I'll end with this, and we'll pick up right at this point on the next episode of Redeemed and Restored Podcast. Redeemed and Restored Podcast at gmail.com is the email. If you want to reach out, maybe share your story, stuff like that, that's the email. Please shoot it over. If you want to reach out, I would really love to hear from you. And so there I am in the back of the car. I'm cuffed. We pull back over to the store where I stole stuff from. I'm thinking through how bad it is. I'm now like, man, they're charging me with 3 felonies. One of them I could probably get dropped because the attempted identity theft would be cleared up once I confirm I knew the person. So I'm like, 2 felonies, plus the 2 in Florida that I got, dropped as long as I did everything good for a certain amount of time. Now I'm 4 felonies deep. I'm like, I'm going to prison for years, at least 2 years, guaranteed. And I'm like, this sucks. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I start screaming at the ceiling, and I'm praying, and I'm talking to God, and I'm like, if this is what has to happen for me to sober up, if I have to go to prison, whatever it is, I don't even care anymore. I just want your will for my life, God, not mine. That's what I said. As soon as I said those words, I just want your will for my life, God, not mine. The door pops open, and I'm like, huh? And the cops say, Mr. Noland, you can get out of the car. I'm like, are you sure? You were joking about how you wished I would have ran back there and how you would have tackled me and been able to chase me down. And we were joking about that. Is this where I get out of the car and grab my bag and start walking away? And, you chase me down, and just kidding. April Fools, but it's May. No, and they were like, nope. That right over there, they point to the front of the store. They're like, that's the owner of the store. It's like 10 o'clock at night. I've stolen from the store too many times at this point now. You would think they would want me to go to jail. He said he heard that you lost your job with COVID and all this stuff, and he doesn't want to press charges. We called your girlfriend, and she confirmed that that's her information. And then we're going to take your drugs, but we got another call, so we have to go. And I couldn't believe it, man. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But that moment right there, I could have gone to prison for just an insane period of time. I tell God, no matter what, I want his will for my life, not mine. And the door pops open. And through a series of another story I'm going to tell at the beginning of the next episode, that was the beginning of an absolute miracle to get me out of Seattle and get me down to the Dream Center in Los Angeles. So instead of going to prison, I ended up in the Dream Center in Los Angeles. There's still a lot more to the story, but God is so good that even in the midst of my mess, when I tried to run, when I tried to do things, when I tried to force my will into situations, I finally cry out to God. And I did. I yelled. The cops looked at me like I was nuts. And he instantly answered my prayer and started the ball rolling on a crazy set of events, the parting of my Red Sea to get me out of my Egypt and into eventually the promised land. So I'm going to stop it right there. And maybe you're running from God right now. Maybe you're trying to do everything that you possibly can to have a relationship with him, but you're intentionally sinning. Maybe you're using drugs. Maybe you're having sex with your girlfriend. Maybe you're just looking at porn. Maybe you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing. And you're trying the hardest you can to continue to walk down the straight and narrow path, but you're hiding something, and things are starting to get out of control. I just want to let you know that at any point, you're never too far gone. You're never too far from God. You can stop right now. You can turn, and you can repent, and you can go the other way. And if you cry out to God right now and you beg God to save you in whatever situation you're in, if you beg God for a miracle, if you ask God for his will in your life and not your own, and you trust in what Jesus did on the cross, you trust that he lived a perfect life, died a death unimaginable, rose 3 days later, and the good news of the gospel is that he's alive. Your Savior lives. And when you put your trust in him and when you confess with your mouth that he's Lord and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And as long as you repent, like it says in Acts 2:38, repent, be baptized, receive the Holy Ghost. That just means a change of mind or a change of heart. You can turn and go the other way. It doesn't matter how bad it's gotten. It doesn't matter what you think it's going to turn out to be. God has a plan for you. Romans 8:28 says that God works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. You're called according to his purpose. It's time to stop sinning. Stop doing the things that you know you're not supposed to do. And all you have to do is call on the mighty name of Jesus, and he will rescue you. He will rescue you and provide an environment where your faithfulness to him can flourish. That is the story from the beginning of the Bible to the end. God rescues. God rescues, he redeems, and he restores. And the gospel is restorative. Let it restore you. And so I just want to pray with you. And if you made a decision today to make Jesus the Lord of your life, I want to hear about it. Redeemed and Restored Podcast at gmail.com. If you have a story you want to share, redeemed and restored podcast at gmail.com. My name is Mike. There you go. I said it twice in the same episode. And I just thank God for new opportunities and second and third and fourth and fifth chances. And I can't wait to pick up on this in the next episode. God, I just pray for anybody under the sound of my voice that if, they're struggling and they're going through it right now and they need you, God, I just pray that you reveal yourself to them. I pray that they turn, repent, and go the other way, God. I know that there's forgiveness from you on the other side of that. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for your mercy. Surround them with people that can disciple them and help them. And if it means getting into a program, God, I pray that the right programs and opportunities open up. And I just thank you for rescuing them. I thank you for providing an environment for their faithfulness to you to flourish. God, you are so good. Thank you for your faithfulness. Jesus, thank you for everything that you did for us on the cross. And thank you for your Holy Spirit to teach us and guide us in all truth. We are just so grateful and thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done for us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with me again. And I look forward to seeing you as we finish this up. And God bless you. Thank you very much.